All right, let's get started. In this first session, we're going to learn first why we use fractions. Second, we're going to learn the three different parts of a fraction. And then third, we're going to learn to identify the three different types of fractions. So let's get started. Why do we use fractions? Well, we know why we use numbers to count things. So you might have one wrench in your garage, or you might give your mom 2 flowers, or you might have to change 3 light bulbs in your room. We use fractions when we need to count things, but they're between the whole numbers. So for example, let's say after Thanksgiving dinner, you have 1/3 of a pie left over. You have more than 0 pies. If you had 0 pies, you would be right here and you wouldn't have any pie. But you have less than 1 pie. If you had 1 pie, you would be over here and you would have a whole pie. You have between 0 and 1 pies. You have 1/3 of a pie. So the fraction 1/3 lets us understand that we have between 0 and 1 pies. Now let's say on your way home from Grandma's, it takes you 2.5 hours to drive home. It takes you more than 2 hours. If it was 2 hours, it would be over here. But it takes you less than 3 hours. If it was 3 hours, it would be over here. It takes you 2.5 hours, which is between 2 and 3 hours. And in both these examples, the fractions let us understand that we're counting things between the whole numbers. 1/3 of a pie is between 0 and 1 pies, and 2.5 hours is between 2 and 3 hours. Now let's talk about the basic parts of a fraction. Every fraction we'll ever work with will have a top number called a numerator. In this case, in this example, the numerator is the number 2. Also, every fraction we're ever going to work with is going to have a bottom number called a denominator. In this case, the denominator is 5. Now I want you to remember these two terms, the numerator, which is the top number, and the denominator, which is the bottom number, because we're going to be using them a lot. In addition to these two terms, some fractions, not all of them, but some of them, will also have a number off to the left, you can see it right here, which is a whole number. So these are the 3 basic types of a fraction. The numerator, which is right here, the denominator, which is right here, and then some fractions are going to have the whole number off to the left. All right, now let's talk about what a fraction tells us. So let's assume you have a pizza, but you aren't going to eat the whole pizza. You're only going to eat part of the pizza. Let's say you're going to eat 3/4 of a pizza. Let's see how much pizza that is. So the lower number, the denominator, is a 4. What the denominator tells us is how many equal slices we need to cut the pizza into. Now we have a pizza with 4 slices. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're going to look at the top number. Do you remember what that was called? The numerator. The numerator tells us after we've cut the pizza into 4 equal slices, how many of those slices we're going to keep for ourselves. Since the numerator here is 3, let's keep 3 slices for ourselves. And there we have, you can see we have 3 slices. 1, 2, and 3. So this shows us what 3/4 of a pizza would look like. We sliced the pizza into 4 equal slices, and we took 3 of those slices for ourselves. So let's look at some examples of different fractions and what they would look like with a pizza. So we already talked about 3/4 of a pizza. Now let's talk about 1/2 of a pizza. What would 1/2 of a pizza look like? So remember, the first thing we do is we look at the denominator, and that tells us how many slices we need to cut the pizza into. Since the denominator is 2, we will cut the pizza into 2 equal slices. And there we have it, 1, 2. Now the numerator tells us of those slices how many we're going to take for ourselves. So since the numerator is 1, let's take 1 slice for ourselves. And there we have our 1 slice. And this is what 1/2 of a pizza would look like. We have 1 slice of a pizza that was cut into 2 slices. Let's make it a little harder. What would 4/7 of a pizza look like? Remember, the denominator, the lower number, is a 7. So we're going to cut the pizza into 7 equal slices. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now the numerator is a 4, so we're going to take 4 of those slices for ourselves. There you go. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4 slices. This is what 4/7 of a pizza would look like. A pizza that was cut into 7 equal slices, and we took 4 of them. Now these are just 3 examples of fractions, but just like numbers, there are an unlimited supply of fractions in the world. Now let's talk about the 3 different types of fractions. We've mostly been talking about regular fractions, and 6/7 is an example of a regular fraction. Like all fractions, it has a numerator and a denominator. But then there are 2 special types of fractions. There's a mixed fraction, and 3 2/5 is an example of a mixed fraction. Like all fractions, this fraction has a numerator and a denominator, but then what makes it a mixed fraction is it also has a whole number. 3 is the whole number. Any fraction that has a whole number with it is called a mixed fraction. Now there's a 3rd type of fraction called an improper fraction. 9/4 is an example of an improper fraction. Like all fractions, it has a numerator and a denominator, but what makes this an improper fraction is the numerator, here the 9, is bigger than the denominator, here the 4. So any fraction you ever see where the numerator, the top number, is bigger than the denominator, the bottom number, is an improper fraction. So now let's look at what these two special types of fractions would like. So let's look at the fraction 3 2/5. Let's say on 4th of July you were going to eat 3 2/5 pies. How much pie would that be? Well, we know from the whole number that you're going to eat 3 whole pies. So there are 3 whole pies. We know you're going to eat that. But then we know from the fraction that in addition to those 3 pies, you're also going to eat 2/5 of another pie. So let's get that other pie. And we know from the denominator, we need to cut that last pie into 5 equal pieces. There you go. And we know from the numerator, we need to take 2 of those pieces for ourselves. 1, 2. There you go. So now we're showing 3 2/5 pies. You have the 3 whole pies, 1, 2, 3, and then you have 2/5 of this final pie. And you can see we have 2 slices, 1, 2, of a pie that was cut into 5 total slices. That's what 3 2/5 would look like. Now let's try to figure out what an improper fraction would look like. Here we have 9/4. So remember, we're going to take the denominator and use that to figure out how many slices we should cut the pizza into. We'll cut the pizza into 4 slices. Now let's just take one of those slices. This is what 1/4 of a pizza would look like. But we don't want 1/4 of a pizza, we want 9/4 of a pizza. So let's take 9 of these slices and see what that looks like. There's 1 slice, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 slices of pizza that were cut into 4 slices each. So you can see this is what 9/4 of a pizza would look like. That's a lot of pizza. All right, we're near the end of this session and we're going to do a skill test now. What I'd like you to do is identify for me with red boxes all the improper fractions that you see. Remember, an improper fraction is a fraction where the numerator, the top number, is bigger than the denominator. 4/3 is an improper fraction because the 4 is bigger than the 3. Good job. 18/13 is an improper fraction because the 18 is bigger than the 13. Now there's one more improper fraction. Can you find it? There it is. 13/16 is the last improper fraction on this page. Good job. Now I'd like you to find all the mixed fractions. Remember, a mixed fraction is one where there's a whole number with it. So 1 6/11 is a mixed fraction because of the whole number 1. 6 2/5 is a mixed fraction. 2 3/7 is a mixed fraction. And there's one more mixed fraction there. Can you see it? Good job. 3 1/4 is a mixed fraction. So now we know how to identify which fractions are regular fractions, which fractions are improper fractions, and which fractions are mixed fractions. Good job. So now we're at the end of this session, and in this session we learned first why we use fractions. Remember, to count between whole numbers. Second, what the different parts of a fraction are. The numerator is the top number, the denominator is the bottom number, and some fractions have whole numbers. And then third, to identify the different types of fractions. Remember, there are regular fractions, there are mixed fractions, and there are improper fractions. Great job!